Good afternoon from Port Elizabeth, folks. Yesterday, in a shocking disregard for the rule of law, in clear violation, well, at least from a layman's perspective, clear violation of South Africa's constitution, the Western Cape High Court, which had no business taking on a case, an urgent interdict from President Cyril Ramaphosa, gave its decision. And that decision was that Ramaphosa isn't subject to the rule of law. He's above the law. South Africans aren't above the law, but the president is. They prevented Parliament from pursuing impeachment proceedings against Cyril Ramaphosa. And the argument put forth by these judges isn't only weak, it's ludicrous and hilarious, saying that if the report was done incorrectly, that it would do undue harm to the president and subject him to humiliation. Ramaphosa is a public figure. Public figures, especially politicians, are open to ridicule and humiliation. It comes with the territory. What you can say about a public figure is much more, open to interpretation than you can against a private citizen. Criminal injury, defamation, slander, the standards for public figures are much higher. They're in the public sphere. Cyril Ramaphosa, what more humiliation could this man suffer other than being arrested and imprisoned? His explanation for Pala Pala is beyond a sick joke. Please, somebody identify one promise that the president of this republic has delivered on since become president. Have we seen the $100 billion in foreign direct investment? No. Have we seen a reduction in gender-based violence? No. Have we seen a reduction in poverty? No. Have we seen a growing economy? The green shoots? No. South Africa's economy, after inflation and population growth, is negative, growing at 0.5% this year. Now, they'll blame it on everything else: COVID, evil colonial powers, the Iran war. But the bottom line is the ANC is not leading this country. They're following the gangsters in the construction mafia, in the taxi mafia, and those who are actually running this country, the corporate elites. The ANC is just grifting and scamming what they can. And to make the claim that the president would suffer unfair humiliation because of his actions is comical, to say the least. They didn't question the report on its merit. They didn't say that there's no case to be made here. They're just saying that perhaps the report was filed incorrectly. It was completed incorrectly. While we discuss this, what we've had so far is a corrupt parliament with an ANC majority dismissing ethics violations against the president with no serious investigation. And now this investigation years later, 6 years after the fact. But no one is answering. Perhaps Cyril Ramaphosa is innocent. I can accept that. But the man lies out of both sides of his cheek. He said he would honor and respect the decision of the Constitutional Court. And the Constitutional Court said he had a case to answer for it, and Parliament can proceed with its impeachment hearing. But Ramaphosa ignored that. He didn't respect the court. He only respects the findings that come to the conclusion that he wants. The Western Cape High Court has said that he gets off the hook. Now let's discuss that. What the hell is going on here? How does a lower court overturn the apex court, the superior court, the top court of the country, the one responsible for holding the Constitution to account? Yet the Western Cape High Court has ruled a decision that overrules the Constitutional Court. That makes no sense. This is jungle politics. This is jungle justice. This is ridiculous. How do you overrule the Supreme Court? Now, you can argue that the Supreme Court got it wrong. In the United States, our Supreme Court often gets things wrong. They often get politically charged actors sitting on the court who violate the spirit of our Constitution. If you want a decision that comes to mind, Plessy versus Ferguson, 1896. Our Supreme Court held that separate but equal, in other words, apartheid-like rules were legal. That as long as black people had separate but equal accommodations, it was okay to segregate society. Our Supreme Court basically said that apartheid was legitimate. Not only is it morally reprehensible and bankrupt, it was unconstitutional. Yet the court found in favor of segregation. Fortunately, that mistake, that error, that political, disgusting, vile act was overturned with Brown versus the Board of Education of Topeka, Kansas in 1954. 50 full years afterwards, an entire 2 generations of lives lived under segregation, courtesy of a failed Supreme Court. So you can make the argument the Constitutional Court got this wrong about this report and whether Parliament should go forward. But you cannot overrule them, not unless you change the Constitution. This is lawless. This is jungle nonsense. South Africa has gone rogue, or at least the Western Cape High Court. How in the world are the media not focused on the unconstitutionality of a lower court overturning the apex court's decision? Never mind the fact that there is something to answer for this case. Maybe it's not Cyril Ramaphosa, I'll accept that. But it's his game ranch, and $580,000 in U.S. currency was smuggled into this country, not declared to SARS for tax purposes, not declared to immigration for tracking purposes. And then the money was stuffed in a sofa instead of put in a bank. To hide it from SARS? Is that why? And who was the money from? A so-called Sudanese businessman who came to buy Ankoli cattle, except the cattle never left the ranch. They still haven't left the ranch. And he didn't pay for their upkeep. Clearly, there's something dirty going on here. And beyond that, the story broke years later after the police lied in their annual report. They claimed there were no break-ins at any of the 43 VIP residences they protected that year. Except that's a lie, because it was a break-in at Pala Pala. That was a residence that they guard. And not only was a break-in, so we have the police lying in their reports, but after watching Schlanga Commission, the fact that the police ever tell the truth at the highest levels is a shocker. Lies are their mode of operation, the modus operandi. So that doesn't shock me. But what shocks me is that the people who robbed Pala Pala were then purportedly kidnapped in collusion with Namibian law enforcement, brought back to South Africa where they're purportedly tortured. And then they were also supposedly paid off bribes to keep quiet. Where are the criminal cases in the docket for these things? Who the hell does the Western Cape High Court think they are? God Almighty? They don't have a right to overrule the Constitutional Court. This is pure nonsense. And South Africans shouldn't stand for it. You should not stand for this. You should stand against it and demand accountability. And for the members of Parliament, obviously the EFF and a few other parties, they're angry about this. Keep pushing. You were right for once to push. At least this isn't racist. You're pushing for justice. And justice must be served. If Cyril Ramaphosa is innocent and he respects the decision of the court, then why is he trying to stop the court from hearing this? Ask yourself that. Why? Because he's above the law. And that's just sad. What say you, South Africa? From Zanzi. From Port Elizabeth, reporting, this is Chris. Cheers.